Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. We're a father-son business podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And folks, let me just tell you, I had to forcibly shut down the green room because I don't know if we were chasing rabbits or getting answers, but man, I'm excited for this conversation. Chris, man,
Hey, thank
it's
you guys.
great to have you here
Thank you
today.
guys, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. So thank you for having me.
So my first thought as I was getting ready for our show today is because we've talked and by the way, folks, this is a no bullshit kind of guy, and that's really where my question goes and comes from is where did this all right, I'm taking action. I'm confident. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to show you how to do this. Where did all
That's a
that come from?
multifaceted question, and it'll probably take me about 3 hours to answer it. But Otis, thank you for that question. You know, when I think about it, my upbringing was less than ideal. Let's just put it that way. There was a lot of verbal abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse in my life. And then up until then, it was pretty crazy. I was bullied at school, bullied at home, bullied on my street, had no sense of self-confidence whatsoever. So for me, even just to be sitting in front of a camera and talking, thinking about back up all my life is pretty incredible. I'm actually writing my whole book right now. It's got 169,000 words of my journey. And it ultimately got to a point where shit went so bad that I ultimately had to make a decision for myself to get out of a situation. Otherwise, I was going to wind up dead, or I was going to wind up in a patrol car because I was doing bad things and I was trying to kill myself. Unfortunately, I sucked at it. And then ultimately I just decided, you know, once I got through that process and was able to go back and rebuild my life, the only thing I wanted to do was to go tell other people, hey, you can do it too. And so just to give you an example, I dropped out of the 7th grade. When me and my mom became homeless, we were homeless for 4 years. And one of the best parts of my life, and we could dig into this, was later on in life, I was invited to go back to that junior high school and speak to the 7th and 8th grade class. And I got to tell you guys, I walked into that gymnasium. I had passed by the junior high school a few times in my life because I'm nostalgic, like, oh my God, that's the last place I went to school. But I'd never set foot on the ground since I was 13 years old. And I went back there in my 30s and walked in and spoke to the 7th and 8th grade class. And I was shocked at how small these kids were and thinking about how small I was when I had to become a man, literally, and be homeless on the streets with my mom for 4 years. And so I just decided that I wanted to take my life and go back and speak to these kids and empower them to let them know that they're going to go on a journey that may be hell, but on the other side of it, they can get through it. And because if I can do it, then anybody can do it. So that became kind of the launching pad for me, just wanting to help people. And I found out I was really good at it.
That's an amazing way to go full circle like that and to get that kind of a moment. What I was curious about as you're going through that a little bit before we get to the kids, because we do want to get there. But talking about the self-confidence, being bullied, and then making that change. What I'm always curious about with folks is what was that kind of like moment of recognition like? Was it a rock bottom? Was it just a like you saw somebody, you're like, oh my gosh, I could just be like that if I just carried myself with confidence? Or what way did you take that?
It was a 9mm gun. I had a 9mm pistol put to my forehead, and I came back. I was living in this trashy motel with my mom, and after the two failed suicide attempts, thank God I sucked at it. I was coming back, and I was coming back through this back part of the motel, and this black guy walks out of the kind of the shadows and goes, "Yeah, man." He goes, "I got a carton of Reds for $5. You want them?" And I said, "Oh no, bro." I said, "I'm cool." I said, "I smoke menthols," and he kept getting in my face. I had long hair, wearing a leather jacket. And he kind of got in my face. I'm like, okay, he probably thinks, I'm up to something. And so the long story short is I said, man, I said, I don't, he goes, you don't want my cigarettes because I'm because I'm black. And I said, dude, I don't care what fucking color your skin is. I grew up in Inglewood. I was the only white kid on the street in 110th Street in Inglewood. You can go check it out. I said, I don't care what your color your skin is. I care what color the pack of cigarettes are. And I smoke Cools. And he was like, oh man, I don't believe you, man. I should just punk your ass right now. And I went to go reach in my back pocket to grab my cigarettes. And as soon as I reached back, he put a gun to my head. And I was like, okay. And I still pulled the cigarettes out, and I said, if you're going to pull the fucking trigger, pull the fucking trigger. I said, I smoke Cool menthols, and I fully expected, guys, that I was going to hear a click, and that was going to be it. And I thought, man, my mom's going to finally miss me. She's going to realize how much she took advantage of me and how much she, put me down. And I thought it's going to be all over. And then fortunately, one of the guys came out from the motel, a black guy that we had been helping, even though we didn't have much, we were always helping other people. And he's like, no, him and his moms are cool. Him and his moms are cool. And so fortunately, the guy put the gun away. I wound up learning about him. His name was Keith. He was just fresh out of prison. He'd been in there for attempted murder. Imagine that. And it was that culmination after 4 years of being homeless on the streets, having to dig through dumpsters for food and everything. And by the way, just this is a little sub note. I had 18 cats and 4 dogs living with me in that car. So we were actually living in a car with 18 cats and 4 dogs. My mom had various psychological disorders and chemical dependencies, if you so paint a picture for that. And so once this happened, and I really realized, fuck, I could die. I sat there and I looked at, one night I was sitting on the top of the stairs at the motel, and I looked down, I saw the drugs and the prostitution and the cops and everything, and I thought, man, you know, I wanted to get out of the situation with my mom. I wanted just to go back to being a family. That's all I ever wanted. I never knew my biological father. He was never present. And I just want to get out of this situation. But I started realizing, I'm like, there's only 3 ways I'm going to get out of it. Either in a patrol car, in a pine box, or I'm going to have to stand up for myself and take that risk and disappoint my mom and leave her in this situation. But she chose to be there. And that was one of the hardest decisions I ever made in my life. But had I not made it, I doubt I would be sitting here talking to you guys today. So that's what I teach people to do, is I teach them how to have confidence and make those tough decisions to move on with their life. Yes, it'll be hard. Yes, it'll be tragic. Yes, it'll be horrible. But on the other side of it, will it be worth it? 100%.
That's yeah, and that's a tough choice to make in getting out of that situation. What I mean, the choice is one thing. The action step that you take to actually leave it has to be, you know, a whole nother thing. Because yeah, I mean, you in that moment you felt it, right? In that moment, it's like I've got to do something. But it's not until you take that action step. So what was that step?
That's a great
question. What'd you do first?
I believe that God, source, universe. I'm not a particularly religious person, but I'm a spiritual person. But I do believe in God, source, universe, however you want to look at it. I believe that when you're ready to take an action and to step into something, that they will provide, he or she will provide the opportunity, but also will test you with it. And so it sounds crazy, but I was working, one of my jobs was a telemarketing job. And at the time it was out of this guy's apartment in Huntington Beach, California, here in Surf City, California, one of the most beautiful places in California. And we went to work that day. A guy that I knew in the motel, he and I worked together at this place. And so we went to work one day, and this guy, real super nice guy, his name is Norman Dodd. He had an office, but he downsized it, and he just kept us too for telemarketing. We were setting roofing contractor appointments. Sounds kind of creepy. We were doing it in his bedroom. So people were like, what are you doing? Like an 800 line? I'm like, nope, that wasn't that time, but I did that once before. That was a lot of fun. But we'll talk about that some other time. So we went there, and he says, hey guys, I got good news and bad news. And at the time I was 17 years old. And it was probably about 3 or 4 days after I kind of made this conscious decision, like I got to get out of the situation, but I have no idea how, but I'm ready, right? I'm ready to do this. And so he says, I've got good news and I've got bad news. And I said, well, I've had enough bad news to last a lifetime. What is it? And he goes, well, I want to leave you guys my apartment with the first and the last and the deposit. He goes, because I know you guys have been in tough situations. I know you've been homeless. He goes, I just want to give you guys a chance to like have a fresh start and have a really nice place and kind of get your feet on the ground and just have a good beginning. And I was like, wow, oh my God. And me and Robert looked at each other like, oh my God, we could do this. We could get your brother here. We could get Rambo here. We could get Carlos here. We can, you know, at a 2-bedroom apartment, we can get 5 guys in here and we'll be able to make the rent. It was $825 at the time, by the way, which probably now that place is probably like $2,500, $3,000. And so, and then all of a sudden it occurred to me, I'm like, wait a minute, if that's the good news, what's the bad news? And he says, well, I'm going to move the operations to Dallas, Texas. As you guys know, here in California, the taxes and everything are too expensive. This was back in 1987. And he says, I got to move the operations. He goes, but I just dig you guys so much, and I just want to leave this place for you, so, you know, to kind of give you a head start. We're like, okay, wow. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me again. I'm like, wait a minute, I have my mom. And so it took me about 3 or 4 days to kind of make that decision. And then finally I thought, you know what, maybe this time, like we literally won the lottery while we were homeless and she still didn't get us out of that situation. I said, maybe this time she's going to be like, Chris, I want you to go. You deserve to have an amazing life. You've stuck with me through thick and thin when everybody else has abandoned me. You've been here. You need to go live your life. I've fucked my life up. Go live yours. And I really just prayed in my heart that that would be the case. And unfortunately, when push came to shove and Robert says, are you going to go or not? I was like, okay, let me talk to my mom. And I talked to her, and within 20 seconds, she was calling me every name in the book, telling me I was selfish and what am I supposed to do and how am I supposed to survive? And, you know, I can't believe you're a fucking asshole and da-da-da-da. And, you know, I literally tried to have me arrested for taking my own car. And then, so ultimately I was like, okay, I got to make this choice. I said, Mom, I'm going to leave you here, but I'm going to come back here every night. I'm still going to give you money. I'm going to do whatever I possibly can, but I need to get out of here. Otherwise I'm going to be dead or in jail. She didn't care. I still left, and that was the jumping off point for me, really truly living moment to moment and just fighting and struggling, eating ketchup sandwiches and living with 5 guys in a 2-bedroom apartment, getting 3 jobs, and then ultimately I met a girl whose dad kind of saw into me, and we can go from there if you'd like.
Yeah, well, I think there's so many great life lessons, and you know, it reminds me of I stumbled across this Jordan Peterson little short video yesterday, I guess it was. Really doesn't matter what day it was, But what I remembered of it was if you keep trying to help somebody and they keep refusing it, you keep sticking out your hand to help pull them out of the water, they're drowning, they are eventually going to get you around the neck and drown you. And that was probably the realization that you finally had with your mom in that
I gotta get out
moment.
of here, otherwise I'm gonna wind up literally in jail. That's the path I was going down. I was doing drugs, drinking, driving fast, just doing some crazy stuff. Almost got picked up by the cops a couple of times. Fortunately, I was pretty slick and got my way out of it. But yeah, it was push comes to shove, and then from that point on, it was pretty miraculous what started taking place.
How did you then, and you already hinted at it, so I'm really just teeing you up on this, but then how did you start to build from there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm five guys living in a one bed or a 2-bedroom apartment. Of course, we got girls over, right? And so my buddy John, who came to live with us, he went to work at Kmart, which was nearby our apartment, and he came home one night and he goes, "Hey, I asked a bunch of girls to come over and have a party." So we're like, "Oh fuck, we got to get this place cleaned up." So we got the place cleaned up, and like 6 or 7 girls came over, some guys came over, had a great time. But through that, each of us, myself, my buddy Robert, and my buddy John, we all met 3 girls that night. And so I met this girl named Tammy. And through that relationship, it was like really my first girlfriend. I didn't lose my virginity until I was 16. I was now 17. That was the best 3 seconds of my life, by the way. And so I met this girl, and so I thought people were going to be like, oh, I never told people I was homeless, but I was trying to figure out what to tell her, and finally I just told her the truth because I was so embarrassed, and I thought she's just gonna dump me. And she was from Fountain Valley, upper middle class. She was about to graduate high school. Parents both have jobs. Just like they have the ideal situation. And here I am, the kid on the other side of the tracks. And so her dad, unsurprisingly to me, didn't kick me out of the house. He says, he started believing in me. He's like, "Chris, what have you ever thought about going back to school, and getting your diploma?" And I'm like, "Are you crazy, dude? Like, seriously, you want me to go back to 7th grade? I'm almost 18 years old right now. I smoke cigarettes. I've had a lifetime in the last 5 years. There's no way I can hang around kids my age. I've hung around, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds. I've always been around older people all my life." And he says, "Well, you can get this thing called a GED. I'm like, "What the hell's a GED? I don't know what the fuck that is." I did poorly in school. I sucked at school. I was told I was stupid all my life. It's not a joke. And so I had no self-confidence. I just was basically just trying to, I felt like I was conning everybody every second just to try to be successful. And he says, "No, you can get this general equivalency diploma." He goes, "Girls who get pregnant in high school, they can go back and get this." And it's basically like, you're getting your diploma. And I thought about it for a second. I'm like, well, this guy's got furniture in his house he doesn't even sit on. Like, he has that front chair. I'm like, he's got a job. He's got nice cars. Maybe I should just take his advice, right? Success leaves clues. And so this is before the internet. So I went home to my apartment and I pulled out the phone book and I started calling high schools around the area. And I'm like, "Hi, I have no idea what I'm doing, but do you have a GED program?" And so I called about 10 schools and finally wound up on a school that does it. And they said, "Okay, here's what the deal is. We're going to have you come in and we're going to have you take a test, and then we'll see where you're at. And then based on that, we'll give you homework to take home. And it's like continuation school. And then when we feel that you're ready, you can take the test and then you can get your GED." And I thought, oh my God, this is going to take me 10 years. This is ridiculous. I suck. How am I going to do this without a teacher? Just totally just disintegrating any possible hope I had of getting this. And I just decided just to take it one step at a time. And so I went down there and I took the test, and surprisingly, I'm actually pretty smart. And it took me about 6 months to make up all those years of high school and junior high. And then ultimately I took my test and got my GED. And I went back and I told him, like, "Here, I did it. Now, can you leave me alone?" And he says, "Hey, Chris, what about college?" And I'm like, "What the fuck does this guy want from me? Really, college? Are you kidding me? Like, I'm not a college person. I never imagined myself even going to college." Fast forward, I went to college for 12 years and graduated with my master's degree the same year I bought my first house. Yay, Chris.
That determination, and I'm, it leads me to the same sort of question I always ask all my veterans that are on the podcast, right? It's kind of that, what was that lesson you got from basic training and that, but what I'm looking for is what's that lesson that street smart lesson, because that's what I'm hearing. It's like I survived the streets and then switch that, going to jail or in the coffin sort of thing to doing something positive. What's that thing, that lesson or mantra or whatever you gained on the street that you're still like grab it and put it in the front pocket so it's quick
That's a
quick
two-part question.
access.
Thank you for asking me that, Otis. For me, number one, my mom, irrespective of all the bad things she did with me and in my life, she always taught me just to never give up. She was the most resilient person that I could ever imagine on earth. I mean, like, she was faced with a challenge. She just kept going through it and through it and through it and through it. She never sat down. She never whined. She never complained. She just kept, I mean, irrespective of what she was going for, she always had that tenacity. And so I've had that drive with him. Like, we just don't stop. We keep going. And that's what I teach my clients, is to how to be unstoppable. But God's honest truth, it was Bill. It was this gentleman who saw into me, didn't see me for who I looked like and what I was doing. He saw into me, and he told me one day, he says, Chris, he goes, you're only limited by the parameters of your own mind. You're only limited by the parameters of your own mind. Ooh. So for me, I think about it. I love quotes. Quotes have helped me out so many times in my life. Like Henry Ford says, if you think you can and you think you can't, you're right. And I just love that simplicity of it, but yet the power of that. So I just kind of put that in my brain. Like, if I think I can't go to school, then of course I won't be able to. But if I start having that idea of possibility, perhaps if I study harder, I can graduate. Perhaps if I get people around me that are brighter and smarter than me, perhaps I can do that. And so I just have that type of tenacity to think, okay, how can I learn my way through this? How can I grow my way through this? And then ultimately I wound up coming up with this phrase for myself: every day is a new day, and what doesn't kill me only makes me stronger. Every day is a new day. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Well, much to the point, I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's a tattoo of it right on my forearm that says, what doesn't kill me only makes me stronger. So I put that on my arm actually in 2016, because I became successful in my 30s didn't mean I didn't have other challenges in my life. So in 2016, I found myself in a very dark place. I quit coaching for about 6 months. I didn't speak. I was just like trying to be normal. Like, I just want to come home and drink beer and watch, TV or whatever. And I've never been that type of person. And so I told myself one day, I was out for a walk, and I said, Chris, you keep saying every day is a new day, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. What is it that you're supposed to learn through this? What lessons can you find in this particular dark point in your life that you're going to be able to do and help other people get through that experience as well? So I've just had that fascination, like, okay, I'm supposed to go through these things. God's going to test me. I have this little picture in my brain of how this works. God's going to test me and put me through challenging situations because he knows I can do them. And on the other side, I can go help more people come out there. Because my whole goal, guys, honestly, I don't care if you're black, white, straight, gay, Republican, Democrat, vax, anti-vax, anything, any label you want to put on it. My whole intention with this world and what I do is to try to make this world a better place, try to bring people together, to get people to listen to one another. I've got a 6-year-old son, and I look at him and I think, my responsibility with all the other adults in the world is to make this place a better place for our kids. Our kids should be able to inherit a place where they feel safe going outside, being able to stay out until the street lights come on, being able to not be picked up from school. When I picked my son up from school a couple of months ago, he's in kindergarten, I was mortified at how many parents went there to pick him up. I'm like, man, when I was a kid, I rode my bicycle home 3 miles, I walked, and now these, we can't have our kids go out anywhere. So for me, my big thing is like to make this world a better place. So I know that the challenges that I go through in my life are there to teach me those lessons so I can help others. And it's been amazing for me to do that.
You can really hear the conviction when you talk about your purpose and, wanting to give back and all of those aspects there. And that really brings up something really interesting. What I think about, similar to what we do, Dad, with Tribe and Purpose, and, wanting to live with that purpose and make that impact and help people and all those great things. And then there's this other side where we are in a coaching industry where there's all sorts of people who, you can take it all the way to scam artists, but there's, at the very least, there's a whole other end of the spectrum there. And, you talked about, your self-confidence when you're younger, struggling with that when you're older as well. How did you build that confidence as a coach when I think you said this, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you were talking about earlier of like, I was, felt like I was just scamming people just to be alive for a long time. So you already have that built into you, and you move past it. And then you are out there coaching and, you're seeing what's the phrase, all the negativity we see is reflection of ourselves, right? So you got that insecurity built in, and then you step into a world with a lot of legitimate scam artists and those type of things. How did you build that confidence back up?
I love that question. Thank you for that. Yes, I have had the privilege when I was a suit and tie speaker looking like everybody else did. I pretty much quickly developed the recipe for success. I figured if I can be the person I need to be for whoever's in front of me, if I can make that person laugh, make them think, make them, just whatever feel good, then I'm going to be successful. If I can just adapt myself to be what they want me to be, be that people pleaser, be that validator, then I'll be successful. And so I got into corporate space. I left my corporate position back in November of 2019. I was there for 26 years. My zone of greatness, my zone of excellence. I could do it with my eyes blindfolded, and I could do that. But ultimately, I started seeing this incongruency about what I was teaching people and not what I was actually doing. And so I went to a multi-speaker event one time, And there were some pretty famous people there. I won't say their names because I try to be respectful. Every once in a while, I drop a little hint, like they have a book series like that you know about. And I was surprised when I was sitting backstage. I made friends with a photographer because I always say hi to everybody. Like I'm a big hi guy. You know, on my way to school with my son, I say hi to everybody. I'm just like I just want to connect people. And so I made friends with a photographer, and I'm like, what was that? That guy over there is a very famous person. I'm like, why does he look all pissed off? He just got done speaking in front of 1,000 people, you know, and he's selling his products. You know, he should be happy that he's inspiring people. He goes, oh no, that guy's a fraud. He goes, what he's mad about is he's asking how many sheets got back from after he spoke, you know, how many packages he sold. I'm like, well, he looks all pissed off, and he's like pointing to people to go back out there and sell again. And so I started discovering that people didn't get into personal development really to make a difference in the world like I was. They were just doing it because they found a system where they could scam people and get them into their programs and keep them into their programs. I mean, I love Tony Robbins to death, but again, he keeps getting people into programs. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do this shit anymore. If I'm going to suck at this, I'm going to suck at it being me. And so I made a conscious decision. I joined a mastermind back in 2013, and I was like, okay, I don't want to be the suit and tie speaker anymore. I want to disrupt the industry. I just want to be me. I'm a biker. I'm a rocker. I'm a smartass, but I have a heart of gold, and I'm very direct, but I can get people to be successful. I just don't want to do this whole, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to do, you know, I don't want to be that person. So fortunately, I surrounded myself with people who are brighter and smarter than me, and I just came to disrupt the personal development space by just being authentic and congruent. So through doing that, through every single step that I've taken, I just added it to my tool belt to say, listen, that's one more thing, Chris, you've done. So now I really have the perspective, like it's happening for me, it's not happening to me. And then I tell people, like my coaching clients, I'm like, what would you think of everything that you've been through in your life, if it was all preparing you for what's next, right? You know, I'm 54, I just turned 54. I still think that God, source, universe is still preparing me for what's next. And I think what's next is to make this world a way better place. I'm actually in the process of, like I said, finishing writing my book. It'll be out later this year. I know it's going to be a game changer. I know it's going to be made into a movie. And so now I have that perspective, like the confidence is something that you get by going and choosing to go through those trials and errors and saying, okay, what can I learn from this? So I teach my clients, what can I learn from this situation and how can I help other people go through it too? Excuse me.
That's awesome. And yeah, authenticity is the best place to be. And it always shocks me how many people try to be somebody else to please somebody else. And you actually were successful at doing that for a while. And that's to me, that is one of the most ironic things I think I might have ever heard is how you went from the tough street kid to the, you know, I need to wear a coat and tie and talk in this way and be this person for those X number of years. I won't try to do the math. But yeah. And then had that moment. And what was the trigger? You know, you mentioned that dark space that you were in. Was that the time that you said, nope, it's time to be me? Or was it a different thing that happened and you just said, screw it, did the Superman thing with the suit?
Yeah, well, actually,
said,
you know,
I'm going.
I love that. It's and you guys are asking great questions. I've been interviewed hundreds of times, and I don't like the same questions like, well, so what was it like to be homeless? It's like, it sucked, of course. So I love the questions you guys are asking. Yeah, actually, in 2013 was when I kind of made the switch. In 2016, what I found myself doing was I still had a very successful corporate career. I was making six figures. And if you've ever read the book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, which is a phenomenal book, he talks about we operate in our zone of greatness, our zone of excellence, or our zone of genius. So I read this book. I listened to it a few times. I studied it. And he talks about in there's upper limit problems. And I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, you know, for me, congruency and authenticity, integrity, values, for me, that's massively important. Like I've had people tell me stuff that I could never repeat to anybody else, but I love the fact that people trust me and they feel comfortable telling me these things. But at that point in 2016, I found myself comfortably miserable, which is what I find a lot of my clients are. Everything's good enough. I have a good job. I have a good car. I have a good home. But I ask people, when did you come here to have this experience to be good or to be excellent? You know, to have a really thriving experience here in this life form that we get to call a human experience. Did you come here to be mediocre? Yes or no? No? Okay. Then what is it that we need to change? But I found myself, again, still trying to balance that line between corporate and being successful, then also doing my coaching and my speaking, because I've been doing that for over 20 years now. And so I just kept drawing that line. I would spend 2 hours driving at home, and I'm just like, okay, when am I going to make the jump? When am I going to make the jump? And I always thought at that point, I'm going to make the jump when I make enough money out of my coaching and my speaking to match what I'm doing in my corporate space. But I found out you can't do that. That's just a ridiculous way to look at it. You can't. Steve Harvey has an excellent video out there. It's 1 minute and 30 seconds. It's probably the best video I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen thousands of hours of videos. I'm constantly learning. Steve Harvey, it's called Jump. And he's in a parking garage, and he talks about the fact that we look at everybody else, and everybody else is flying to the south of France, and people are all happy, and they're buying this, and they're doing that, and we compare ourselves to them, but those people jumped. They literally like jumped, and when they jumped, their parachute didn't open right away. Their back got banged up, they got banged up, but their parachute finally opened. But if you never jump, your parachute never opens. And so for me, that was like the incongruency. So I quit speaking and coaching for about 6 months and just took some time for myself, did a lot of journaling, had a coach, because I highly, highly, highly recommend, if you want to be successful in this world, you need somebody who's going to bust your balls. You need somebody who's going to call you on your bullshit. You need somebody who's going to hold you accountable. Even me, the no excuses coach, I still need that. And so ultimately I just redesigned myself and said, okay, listen, I'm coming out with the filters off, and I'm going to be exactly who I am. And that's when I started. I had a live radio show for 3 years called the KICKASS radio show. And I came out and just I am now. Now I do my 2 podcasts, but it was really taking a look at my life and saying, how do I want to be remembered? Do I want to be remembered as somebody who played it safe and, was complacent and was good enough? Or do I want to have a life where people go, fuck, I want to be like that dude? And so once I just put that in my brain, I want to be like that dude, I never look back. And I've had the amazing support of my wife and family too. That's super important as well.
Everyone always wants like the magic pill to cure things. And, authenticity, I think, probably could fall a little bit into that category. So I want to know, when you made that change, was it a magic pill moment where you did you go through like a day of, getting your head straight on it, and then after that it's like, hey, all rainbows and sunshine, all that, or was it still that nice long process? Oh yeah, sorry, unicorns.
Don't forget the unicorns too. They're unicorns.
You know what really solidified it for me? There was points where people were telling me I was leaving a lot of money on the table, and I was still dressed somewhat professionally. The reason why I wear the bandana is not to be a Bret Michaels knockoff, but I just told myself, like, if I was speaking on stage, how would I want to look? What would I want to wear? And I'm like, I want to wear a t-shirt and jeans, my rock shirts, and my bandana, because I hate sweating. I don't like sweating. So I've always worn a bandana. I've always worn a hat on backwards when I had super long hair. So I'm like, I want to wear my hat. I want to wear my bandana so I don't have to worry about sweating, or a t-shirt, jeans, and my Vans. And that's who I want to be. And so ultimately I was testing the theory, and then I was at an event where Les Brown was speaking. And you guys both know Les Brown, right? Famous, incredible motivational speaker. I mean, off the charts, phenomenal human being. One of the reasons that got me out of the situation that I was in, because somebody gave me these cassette tapes, and I didn't know what personal development was. It was still when I was homeless, and they gave me these Tony Robbins cassette tapes. And this guy was really nice. He had his shit together, but he still lived in this motel. And he says, Chris, I want you to listen to these. I'm like, what band is it? Because I've always been huge into music, as you could tell. And he's like, no, this is personal development. I'm like, what's that? He goes, basically, he teaches you about life. I'm like, okay, whatever. Put the cassette tape in and started listening to this. I'm like, wow, I can actually change my mind. Wow, I can actually change my circumstances. And so Les Brown was one of the people that I listened to on cassette tapes. I would actually go to the library and check out cassette tapes to listen to these people and kind of advance my mind. So I took that personal responsibility. Well, fast forward in Los Angeles, I was at an event where Les Brown was speaking, and he gave an opportunity to work with him in a speaker training. And I thought, oh my God, it's going to be so expensive. I'm not going to be able to afford it. Excuse. And then I got the sheet in front of me, the sheet that they were talking about. And it was $997 for 3 days with Les Brown. I'm like, okay, fuck, I got to do it. So I go to this event, and the first day I get to meet Les Brown. It was amazing. There was about 25 speakers there, all wearing suits and ties. And here I had my bandana. I had a tie on with a dress shirt, kind of loosely fit, with blue jeans and my Converse shoes and my wallet chain. So I was part professional, part, rocker or whatever, just my style. And so
you were a conflict. You were a walking conflict is what you were.
Just to kind of see, Les wanted to see where we were at with our speaking before, and then kind of cater the curriculum to that. And so I get up on stage and I do my 25 minutes. And I'm talking about how I mentor at-risk kids and how I'm the creator of the KICKASS Guide to Life. And he keeps stopping me. He's like, okay, so you swear when you talk to the kids? And I'm like, yes, Les, I do. And he goes, I don't agree with that. Yeah, I think you should have clean language. And I said, Les, I completely disagree. And you can hear everybody in the room go, just disagree with Les Brown? Are you fucking stupid? And so I said, Les, I'm going to talk to the kids like they talk to each other. I'm not going to put on any fakeness about me. I have to be real in order to gain their trust and their respect, to let them know that I know what it's like. I'm not going to sit there and go, okay, I'm going to come here and talk to you about the friggin' problem that you're going through because it's so friggin' frustrating. No, I'm going to talk to him normally. And so he kept stopping me. He wound up spending 45 minutes on me. I have it on audio. I actually recorded the conversation because I wanted to get the feedback of what he was going to say. And so he spent 45 minutes on me. And from that point forward, everybody in the place kept asking me, like, Chris, why don't you put on a suit and tie? What are you trying to do? What you're doing is shooting yourself in the foot and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. We went out to dinner one night in the Sheraton Gateway Hotel, and Les Brown is sitting at the head of the table. I'm literally sitting one person away from him, and my buddy Martin is sitting on the other side, and he's the world championship of public speaking. He came in 10th place, but he still made it that far. And he's like, Chris, just put the suit and tie on. He goes, Jesus Christ, you know, Les is paying attention to you, da-da-da-da. And I said, Martin, who's everybody talking about right now? And I just waited. He goes, you. He goes, you're fucking brilliant. I'm like, yeah. I said, everybody's going to go home and go, there was a guy there who was talking about personal development. He swears and he wears the bandana. And, you know, people are going to find that intriguing because everybody else is like these phonies and these con artists. And so the third day, Les comes into the room and he asks me, he goes, hey, can I see you out in the hallway for a second? God is my witness, not making this up. Takes me out of the hallway of the Sheraton Gateway Hotel right near the stairs. And he says, you know, Chris, he goes, you're a phenomenal speaker. He goes, you're passionate. You have a great story. You have great articulation. You have everything. But he goes, I could put you on stages. I'm not making this up. He goes, I could put you on stages, but I can't do this. And he's kind of looking me up and down. And I sat there and I thought, holy shit. Like what a full, like I listened to you on cassette tapes and here I am having this conversation to you like here, right in front of me. And you're telling me everything that I ever wanted to hear, that I could be super successful and I could be on the stage with Les Brown. And I looked at him, I thought, I can't do this. I can't compromise myself. I've already come this far. I have to own this. And I said, Les, I said, I'm sorry, brother. I said, I appreciate you. I love you to death. I said, but I got to be me. And he goes, well, I don't wear a suit and tie. I wear jogging pants and sweatpants. And he goes, I color my hair with mascara, which I can now say because he said it publicly. I saw it written in an interview one time. I would never say that about him, but I saw it in an interview. So I'm like, if it's in an interview, then it's public knowledge. And he tells me all these things. And I said, Les, I said, I love you, brother. I said, I just got to be me. And then I went back in and my friend was like, what did he want? And I told him later. And so before we ended everything, he walks in the room and he goes, hey, Mr. Kickass. Because Les is super funny. He's like a little kid. Hey, Mr. Kickass, you got one of those kerchiefs for me? I'm like, kerchief, what? And he goes, you know, bandanas. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I always carry 3 of them around in my pocket so I can kind of declare people kick-ass unstoppable, you know, at an event or something like that. Like, oh, what's the bandana about? I'm like, are you unstoppable? And I fold it up and put them on there. Like, now you're unstoppable. And so I go to hand it to him. I said, which one do you want, Les? And he goes, give me the blue one. And so I go to hand it to him, right? And everybody's in the room, like just quiet, like watching us over here off to the side, just having a private conversation. And so he goes, no, fool. He goes, put it on me. And you hear this. And so I later have pictures. If I had a screen share, I could show you. I have pictures of me and Les where I put a bandana on him and we're back to back, you know, smiling and giddy and everything. So I know that I left that experience leaving an impression on him that perhaps maybe he's been somebody he hasn't been for that success and that fame and that money. And I wanted to ask him, like, has that been really worth it, you know, to try to pretend to be somebody you're not necessarily and be famous and all this other stuff. So yeah, that's when I knew I was spot on, when I kept my decision in that moment to stay who I am and not sell out for money and fame and everything else. It was excruciating. And then in 2016, I started questioning myself. Am I being stupid? Am I leaving money on the table? And kind of going through that dark night of the soul a little bit. And then ultimately got my head on my ass and have been rocking ever since.
There's one. Yeah, I got it.
You going?
I got it.
I just got this. You got it. All right, because I got a big one too. I got a big one that I just. Yeah.
So no, I'm really curious, Chris.
Yeah.
So you talked about this episode of the Cam and Otis Show. If you're enjoying this conversation, then make sure to share it with other lifelong learners in your life so they can enjoy it too. Stay up to date with the show on Facebook and Instagram at Cam and Otis Show, and subscribe to our channel on YouTube so you're the first to hear about new episodes and other special content. Now let's get back to the show. So no, I'm really curious, Chris. So you talked about speaking to the kids in their language, and you know, and that's why you swear, and that's what, you know, you're authentic, and I see that 100%. But then I think there's a really interesting question that comes from that, which is you're not in 7th grade anymore. And as you go, your problem set is staying the same age and you're aging. How do you continue to connect there? I mean, is it as simple as I'm laughing to myself, but it's like, you know, you don't need all the slang. You just say, I've thought about this coaching high school rugby. You just say fuck once and they go, ooh, he's cool. Like, it's like, is it really that simple to some extent? Or is there something that you do to make sure that you're still staying connected with those new generations?
That I listen more than I talk. I mean, I talk a lot. I do podcasts and do shows and stuff like that. But Stephen Covey, in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, said, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And that was one of the most important lessons that I learned, because my mother was a very big presence. She always wanted to be in control. She was always the loudest person. She was, you know, she did it out of trying to fear of being known for who she really was. And so for me, seeing how she was unsuccessful in life and she always had to overpower everybody, I thought maybe if I just shut up and listen to people, I'll get a different response. So I've just always been a very attentive listener. That's why I'm really good with my coaching clients and whatnot. And so I do that with the kids. I seek to understand. I don't come in there and say, okay, boys and girls, today you're going to learn how to get your head out of your ass, and what you're doing is wrong. I sit there and say, what's going on, guys? What's going on in your life? I bet you've had some situations with your parents. I bet one of your parents is probably on drugs or something. Yeah, my mom's on drugs. Well, how does that make you feel? Why do you think that you've gotten yourself into a gang? Is it because you found some people that kind of understand you and kind of keep you in as a family? 100%. Yeah, dude. So I say, hey man, I get it. I was kind of in gangs before, and they look at me as a white guy and they're like, what? And I tell them my story, and I'm like, can I tell you a little bit about myself? And they're like, yeah. And so I ask them first so that they're ready to receive the information, and then we just have a candid conversation. And ultimately, they're like, wow, dude, you got your shit together, but you're still yourself. If I was a suit and tie, they'd be like, okay, I'm not going to listen to this phony. He's just in here trying to do this. He's going to get some sort of notch on his belt for, saving a kid or something like that. I said, I'm not here to save you. I'm here to plant seeds, right? You guys may be like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? But I guarantee you, somewhere down the road, you're going to go, that guy in the bandana told me about this, and it's going to register for you at that particular moment, and that's going to be your time to grow and shine. So I'm just planting seeds right now. I'm not trying to change you. I'm just trying to give you some information I wish I had when I was your age, and then you do with it what you want. And so I just come out of it as a collaborative, not a you have to do this like teachers and parents and everybody else are telling them to do. I'm like, just be yourself, but here's some guidelines that might be able to influence you to have a great life.
Yeah.
Because then the next question I have from that then is you're not getting to see your outcome, because you have a very, that is a really wise way of looking at it. I don't want to take any of that away, but also it's nice to know that it worked, right? Like you want to see the scoreboard tick up and that kind of thing, right? So how do you manage that?
To me later on, I've kept my same cell phone number ever since I had a cell phone for when cell phones came out. So I had the same exact phone number. I'm pretty easy to identify. And so I just tell them, whenever you get your shit together, I'd love to hear about it. Or if you're ever in a moment where you're at your worst, please reach out to me. Whatever it is, you can tell me anything. I'll be there to listen. I'll be there to support. I give people my phone number all the time. And so every once in a while, I'll get a phone call. I got a phone call a couple of years ago from a guy that I mentored, 2023, probably 2018. It was definitely before the pandemic. And he was a great kid. But he was still kind of fucked up. And I said, I'm not trying to change you, bro. I said, but you're going to get to a point one day where you're going to remember me and you're going to remember some of the stuff I said. And so he called me and he left me this message. He's like, yeah, bro, it's Damien. Hey, man, give me a call. I want to tell you some stuff. And I was like, all right. So I called him back and he's like, dude, I fucking hit rock bottom. I was kind of listening to you, but I wasn't. But I was doing my own thing and still hanging out with my homies. He goes, but then shit started getting crazy and they started doing more stuff. And I just separated myself from them. He goes, now I got a job working in a warehouse. Now I'm living with my grandma in El Monte. He goes, I just want to let you know, thank you. He goes, you never told me what to do, but you always were there for me. And he goes, I wish other people in my life would have kept their promises like that. He goes, so thank you. So he goes, now I want, because I always tell my kids, I'm like, what I want for you is I want you to be standing here one day and talking to some kids and being able to take your experiences and come back here and make these kids a little bit better, because so many people give up on the kids and so many parents out there shouldn't be fucking parents. They're sitting there playing all their stupid shit games, and these kids are suffering, especially during the pandemic, that, the emotional needs of our kids and the environment that they're growing up in is so toxic. We need to be there for these kids. That's my whole mission and goal. They're not my target audience as far as clients go, but in my spare time, I do everything I can to help spread awareness for men's mental health and for kids' mental health. And I get parents to get their head out of their ass sometimes by being very direct. Like, you used to, like, people I've had coaching clients, I'm like, they've been in a marriage that they've been miserable for 15 years. I'm like, so you're telling your daughters, right? And I know they have daughters. You're telling your daughters it's okay to stay in an abusive relationship because you think you don't have anywhere to go. Is that what you're telling me? Is that what you're telling? I want you to tell it to me. Tell me that that's what you're doing. I'm staying in this miserable fucking relationship so I can prove to my daughters and then go out and have the same experience so I can look back on it and feel like shit later on. Is that what you're doing? No, not what you put it that way. I'm like, okay, what's the one thing you could do right now to change that? What's the one thing you could do to have you talked to your husband? No? Okay. Well, that's insanity. That's stupid. Let's not do that. Let's talk to your husband. Let's see what you can do about going to counseling. If he doesn't want to go to counseling, then you need to leave him. I have nowhere to go. And I tell him a story. I had this lady, Monica Kretschmer, on my show. She was wealthy and she was affluent and she had a great relationship with her husband, but then it started turning sour. And then when she had her baby and he was 7 months old, he was being abusive, and she said, I have nowhere to go. He has all the money And so she literally had to go to the homeless women's shelter, the battered women's shelter. It's a show on my Raw and Scripted show. She had to go there with her baby, where she donated the money to them, and she donated stuff to them. She had to show up to them at 11 o'clock at night and said, I have nowhere else to go. And she had all this money and everything else. She just took her baby, her clothes. She said, fuck, I got to get out of here. And she got out of there, and it was not easy. It was horrible. She had to live in ugly conditions. But fast forward 16 years later, she created the Universal Women's Network up in Canada. It's one of the largest women's network. And she showed her son, like, this is what we do. And she went to learn law school. Her husband's been suing her for the last 15 years. It's been ugly. But she just continues to remain vigilant and stellar and doing what she's got to do. She's sacrificed her personal life, which I don't necessarily agree with. But she has set that example, so anybody can do it. You just have to, how bad do you want it, and what are you willing to sacrifice to get it?
Yeah. Well, you know what I've been thinking, in a different aspect, I have a problem also. And that's, I've got all this information, and I want to give all this information. And how did you, and do you, quite frankly, formulate that so that it is what they need and not what you want to, because what usually we feel like we want to hit all right, I'm going to mute you and I'm going to tell you everything you need for the next 45 minutes, next hour. And that doesn't work, no matter the situation, whether it's a business situation, leadership, planning, crisis, homelessness, whatever it is. So how are you, because your passion just bubbles out all over the place. How are you controlling that?
Communicate it, whether it's a TikTok video, whether it's a blog, whether it's my shows. I do 2 podcasts a week. Whether it's my speaking career, my coaching, social media posts, I find ways to plant seeds, because a lot of people follow me. And I just had somebody, what's crazy, like the last 6 months, so many people have been reaching out to me saying, Chris, I've been following you for the last 3 years. You walk your talk. And so all the seeds that I've planted with those people, they finally start to grow now that they have faith and trust in me. Like, you're the real deal. Now I can really take what you're saying and apply it in my life, because you really understand where it is that I'm coming from. And so sometimes, I mean, honestly to God, guys, the hardest thing for me in the context of what you're talking about is when I have people in my life that I personally love and care about that are shooting themselves in the foot left and right. Like, they fucking got an AK-47 and just shooting them. I'm like, please stop, you're bleeding. Here, I have Band-Aids. I have Band-Aids that are going to stop the bleeding. But I've had to personally sit back and go, fuck, I could totally help them. I could tell them the 3 things, the 5 books, I could get them to fix themselves. But ultimately I had to sit there and have a long conversation with myself and with one of my mentors. And they're like, Chris, if somebody would have robbed you of the experience of having that gun put to your head, how much different do you think you'd be right now? And I'm like, yeah, I might be a lot different. And so I had to put it in my mind that I can't save everybody. I can't help everybody, especially people who are closest to me. What I can do is sit there and hold space for them, that they have to experience these things for themselves. But I could be there as a support person once they do fall, and not sit there and say, I told you so, I had all the fucking answers, like most egotistical pricks do. Hey, I'm here for you now. You're at this journey, you're at this crossroads, I'm here for you now. And so once upon a time, I coined myself a compulsive motivationalist, because I couldn't stop. Like, I would talk to bartenders and waitresses, and anybody who said they had a bad day, I'd be like, you have a fucking bad day, you can wipe your own ass, right? I've had people tell me that. I can. And so I've had to tone myself down to be able to
I can fix it right now.
Here I am. Here's what I'm about. You can find me anywhere. You can throw smoke signals up. I'm pretty easy to find. When you're ready, I'll be here for you. And that's been one of the toughest things in my own personal relationships with my wife, my ex-girlfriends. They were doing things. I'm like, you got to take care of yourself. I can see the future for whatever it is that you're doing, and I want to stop that for you, but I can't. And so some people just have to be on their journey, and when it's their time to change, it's their time to change.
And there's so much power to that, and that trust, you being authentic, and then telling them, I've got a spot for you. It's right here, and it'll be here. It'll always be here till you're ready. And that right there is a power statement that I think just makes an amazing difference in people's mind. Like, and I forgot the gentleman's name that you said called you, and what is it? Damien, that he knew that space was still there, and that's a pretty powerful thing to have, and there's a patience to that. And how do you do that? I mean, because I'm now when I'm working with people, it's a different aspect, but it's that same sort of thing. It's like I told you. It's like I want to do. Somebody told me one time the Vulcan mind melt. Right? I just want to give you everything. Right. It's like I'm going to do the finger thing that old Spock used to do on Star Trek. Right? Whatever that is, and just give you all my knowledge. But there's such a fine line in that, and then there's this energy that I would almost say it's almost like it almost feels negative. Me personally, it's because like I want to tell you, but you also have to hold back. How are you handling that I don't know, frustration? I'll call it a little bit of frustration, because I had a call with a client right before this, and he was here. But I was like, I want to tell you all these other things too.
Question, guys. I'm loving these questions. Yeah, it's
how are you
probably
doing?
one of the more challenging aspects of doing what I do is being able to see the future for people and understand, you're going to go down that road. I have a personal friend of mine. He's not a friend anymore necessarily, and I don't think he'll ever watch this. But we grew up together, and I was married originally. I married that girl that I dated, Tammy. We wound up getting married. One of the most beautiful people in the world. I'm still friends with her. I just texted her this morning. We've been now divorced for I think we've known each other 37 years. We figured out this last February last month. We were like, oh my God, we've known each other 37 years. We met when we were 17 years old. Holy crap. And ultimately, she and my best friend wound up having a little bit of a relationship while I was married, and let's just put it that way. I didn't kill him. I thought about it, and seriously, it's one of the more challenging aspects of my life at that point, where I was like, okay, I have a choice right now. If I go kick his ass, if I blow up his truck, if I do all these things, I'm going to wind up in jail, or I'm going to wind up screwing up my own life. And so that's one of the first times that I really applied that seek first to understand. And through that process, I found out, not that I condone what they did, but I saw how I could be a part of that equation, how I contributed to them finding themselves and just being attracted to themselves. I can own that part of it. But ultimately, to answer your question, I swear a lot. I go to the gym. I used to drink a lot. I listen to loud music. I journal. I talk to my friends. But I've just got to this point now where I found inner peace in not having to prove myself so much. Like when I was a kid, all I wanted was that validation. I wanted my mom's love and significance, and that was the hardest thing. When you're reading this book, I'm literally here's a mock cover, and I'll show you guys because you guys are cool. Trying to figure out where the camera is. So it's called "It's Just You and Me, Kid." It's Just You and Me, Kid. A story of a mother and son survival on the streets of Southern California.
There you go.
As I'm writing this book, I'm realizing that there were so many different times in my life where I've had to push in the clutch because I wanted people's validation. I was very successful in corporate, so when I left corporate in November of 2019, that was an identity blow that I was not prepared for. I'd spent my life at this company working my way up from the warehouse position up to the director of operations, and overnight, I wasn't needed anymore. Overnight, nobody was calling me anymore, and so I went a little bit of a crushing experience, but I just keep realizing, like, okay, I can't change people. I can offer them that advice, and I found peace within myself. The bigger part of the answer to the question is I found peace within myself, not to have to prove myself, to validate myself. As long as I'm happy with me, as long as I go to bed at night feeling I make a contribution to this world, live to my legacy. One of the biggest things for me for me personally, and that I teach people, is when you have a big enough why, you have a big enough how. And so when I was in my 30s, I was successful, 6-figure income, coaching, speaking, traveling the world, doing all that stuff, radio shows, happy wife, everything. And ultimately I was like, there was something missing. So I went to a funeral for one of my coworkers, and I sat in the back of the church, and I thought to myself, and I invite everybody watching this or listening to this to think about this, because it was transformational for me. Again, successful. I was good enough, when we think about that comfortably miserable kind of aspect. And I thought to myself, if I passed away tomorrow, who would show up and what would they say? Well, if I died tomorrow, who would show up and what would they say? And God's honest truth, guys, it's going to sound funny, but 10 or 15 people would show up, Miller Genuine Draft, bottles of Jack Daniels, Motley Crue, Bon Jovi records, and they would sit around and go, fuck, remember that time Chris did that stupid thing? Oh my God, remember that other time when he did that stupid thing? Oh, remember that other time he did that crazy thing? Oh yeah. Oh, he was homeless, and he went back and got his master's degree and wound up changing the world. I didn't want my life to be a postscript of all the efforts that I took to change my life. And so I thought about it, and as I was driving home, excuse me, choked up. As I was driving home, I've just been talking a lot. As I was driving home, I thought, okay, why is this still bugging me? What can I do with this? What can I do with this feeling, right? So I went home and I thought, fuck, I'm going to write my eulogy. there's two biggest fears in the world. You don't want to do public speaking and you don't want to die. I'm like, I'm going to do public speaking and I'm going to talk about dying. So I took pen to paper, which I highly recommend everybody do. Pen to paper, not write it, not type it, but write it, because there's a physical agreement that goes on when you write stuff down. You physically write stuff down. And so I wrote my eulogy. I went to my kitchen, got a glass of water, came back and pushed it to the side of my office. Was like, okay, I did that. I'm going to go on to the next thing that I can get this endorphin release on. And so I went, no, wait a minute. So I picked up the pad of paper and I started reading it. I'm like, Christopher Rausch, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, wait. If I was at a funeral or a memorial service, I would read it out loud. So I started reading it out loud. And the God's honest truth, guys, I had no idea what to expect. I thought I was being stupid, but I started crying. I literally had just, not bawling, but I had tears rolling down my face when I got to the part where it said, Christopher Rausch will have fought for what's right and what's fair. He will have risked for which that mattered. And he will have left the earth a better place for who he was and what he did. That right there was like, bam, that's the leverage. That's the point. So when I wake up every single day, no matter if it's a bad week, a bad month, a bad 6 month, whatever it might be, I wake up every single day. The first thing I focus on is what I'm grateful for. So before my eyes open, I say what I'm grateful for to set the tone for the day. And then the second thing I started doing about 4 or 5 years ago is I started being intentional, right? Because most of the times we pick these things up and we look at social media, we look at the news, we look at the traffic, we look at the weather, everything sucks, everything's bad. Boss is going to be in a bad mood today. We kind of preset our day to be disappointed and to be frustrated. And so I'm like, what is my intention for today? What do I really intend on doing today? And it used to be just one thing, and now it's about 4 or 5 things. I intend on being present and playful with my son. So when I'm in that moment, I'm like, I'm not being a coach, I'm not being anything else. I'm being a 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid with my son. What would my son, what kind of dad would I want if I was 5 years old? That's why I put myself into those positions. What kind of husband would I want if I was my wife? I put myself in those positions to get myself in those moods to be that person with that person. And ultimately, my intention is to fulfill my legacy, so that if today is my last day, God, I hope not. If this is the last conversation I ever have, I teach my son about this, that he can watch this later on in life, go, fuck, Dad was always living his point. Dad did not give up. Dad was out there to make this world a better place for who he was and what he did. And then when they read that at my funeral, then he's going to be like, okay, cool. So every single day I just set that intention. It's not perfect. Yesterday I had this like depressive area for like about 6 hours. I just felt funky. I felt anxious. I was worried about the world. I don't follow the news. I don't follow politics. I can't stand any of that shit. I don't like seeing people saying those people should be dead and all this stuff. I can't follow it. It just breaks my heart, because I know that people are more the same than they are different. And I've proven this by being on stage in front of thousands of people. Like, okay, I know there's some people in here who might be racist. No offense. I don't want you to raise your hand, but look around. You got black, white, short, gay, Republican, Democrat, da-da-da. And I said, everybody looks different. We all have a different outer casing. I said, but you split us down the middle, nobody will be able to tell us apart. I said, so think about that. When you're engaging with people in the world, seek to understand. If they have a different opinion of you, if they agree that Trump should be president and you hate the guy, ask them where that comes from. Why is it that you want this guy to be president? It's a deeper thing besides him being a president. It's something deeper. It's deeper rooted. And that's one of the things I focus on in my coaching, is that root. Like, we can get to that root and figure out what that issue is and pluck that root and plant something better there, then you're all the better for having conversations with me. I realize I was long-winded, but I get passionate.
Damn.
In that same no, it's fine. In that same vein of those roots and those type of things, another question actually came to mind as you're going there. Before we wrap, I just had to ask this. You talked about being agreeable and how that worked well for you in some settings, being a people pleaser and that type of thing. And then you kind of fought against it to some extent. And I think there's an interesting piece there, because, we've talked about this on the show before, Dad, of, behavior is largely a coping mechanism from your childhood, these type of things. People who are people pleasers tend to track a different way and all those kind of things. And then we get to this point where you're like, okay, I recognize that, I want to treat it. But at the same time, people pleasing ain't that bad. You know what I mean? And so I'm curious, how do you view that? Do you think like it's something to where, hey, that is a negative behavior, and then there's something positive that, is kind of, we tend to associate with it? Or would you say it's something, hey, I still want to be agreeable. That's still who I am. It's just making sure it doesn't put me in bad positions.
Like, when you have a set of values, like I ask people, like, what do you value? Most people like, well, I guess I value honesty. I guess maybe. And I'm like, know your values. And then what's your value? Like, what are your non-negotiable values? Your 5 non-negotiable values. You should be able to recite them off the top of your head, be able to say that. And then as you're going through your day, does this align with my values? Am I being sincere and congruent with myself with this particular action? Because yes, I'm a people pleaser and I cater to people, but it's because out of the desire to make them understand or desire to make a connection with them. And as long as it's aligned with my values, I'm not trying to con them or anything else. My coach will tell you I'm the worst fucking salesperson in the world. She's like, Jesus Christ, Chris, you don't close the sale. She's like working on me. She wants to do role playing. I want to teach out. I'm like, I make them an offer. If they want to work with me, great. If not, I'm not going to push them. I'm not that kind of person. I'm just not going to. I'm not going to use some sort of NLP or any other gimmick to try to get them to sign something. If they want to sign it, they want to sign it. I want to work with people who are ready to sign. I don't want to have to convince or try somebody. So that's where I draw my line. But if I can sit there and near to somebody and be able to make a connection with them, and if I can adapt myself a little bit differently and speak their language a little bit, then if I could do that as a way of building that trust, ultimately I'm still going to be the person I am going to be. And then most of the time I find out that they're not being who they need to be, and then once they feel that I'm comfortable being myself, they can be comfortable being themselves, and then we can have a real conversation. But so many people are just like, oh, I can't let them know this. And it's like, tell me your worst fucking secret. I've heard so many things in my life that are just like, wow, okay, thank you for telling me that. Now I got a visual. But once you get real with yourself and you start just being honest, there's no other better feeling than to know you're waking up and you're just being who you are. Like I know I could be super famous and everything else, and perhaps someday, but as long as I leave you guys with this conversation like, fuck, dude, that guy made me think a little bit differently, then I've done my job. I've done what it is that I need to do and I want to do. And perhaps you go out there and you share some of my stuff, or we share this conversation. Some people get healing out of it. They feel better, and we make this world a better place. So as long as it aligns with my values, then I'm good to go.
That's awesome, and there's so many things that the more you and I talk, Chris, the more alignment in how and what we do it becomes very obvious. I talk with my veterans and tell them, hey, you've had this amazing career where you've learned all this crisis management, planning, executive leadership, you name it, all those sort of things that nobody else has gotten. All you've got to do is match the culture you're moving into. The know-how, the processes are there, and it leads me to my lesson learned today. It's not a lesson learned per se, because sometimes at this point in life, and you'll appreciate this too, I'm always learning, but sometimes it's not something new. It's a reminder, and the reminder I always like to do. This is a technique we use. We taught this, whether or not it was official. I never learned this in the Army, of a foot stomper. This is going to be on the test. I'm going to stomp my foot. I won't stomp my foot because you can't hear it, but I'll tap the microphone so you can hear that. Right? Here's something that's going to be on the test. I don't need your validation for who I am. That right there is a great reminder, and I thank you for saying that, along with about
it was my
38 other things that were freaking awesome. But I don't count. Yeah, well, I'm not going to do the math either, because public math, we all know, is a dangerous place to go.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have to use a calculator quite a few.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, is that 48?
Hey, sometimes it might not be 54.
Like
you got to check the
my
calculator.
spelling is shit because I don't have to spell. I can just rely on spell check to tell me. I don't want to take a spelling test right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Believe me. I blame it on my fingers not going in the right direction.
Well, I read personal development books all the time. I'm reading one. I have a book club actually that forces me to. Sometimes we need intentional leverage to make sure we're studying stuff, and so I just make it a point. Most of the books that I read, the personal development stuff that I've consumed, it's already been said, it's already been stated, but I just looking for it said a different way to cement it even further, or to reaffirm that is something we should all be looking for, is like to reaffirm our values, but also be open to, am I leaning my ladder against the right wall of success? Am I climbing up the right wall of success, or am I doing that for all the wrong reasons? And ultimately you want that validation to know that you're on the right path, but we have to be open to sit there and say, is this really working for me? Is it still working for me? Because so many times we go through chapters in our life, and I do see it that way, and I see our life in sections of our life. And sometimes people come into our life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and it's okay to say, hey, that was yesterday's Chris. Like when I quit smoking or quit drugs or quit anything, and I've been on pain pills since 2006, every once in a while I quit, and people are like, oh my God, you quit opioids? Yeah, it's fucking hard and it sucks, but I just sit there and say, that was yesterday's Chris. And so the same thing in our life, if we get to a point where we're evolving and we're changing, because I was not a spiritual guy, I was not a religious guy. My tagline is actually, and I quote, I help you overcome your self-created crap without the self-help fluffy bullshit. But in the last, and in the last 4 or 5 years, I've been surrounded by people who are into that fluffy bullshit, and I've learned about it, and it actually does have a lot of merit. So now my friends joke around like, Chris, you need to change your tagline. I'm like, no, because it kind of upfronts people. Like, what the hell? What do you mean my self-created? It's not my crap. And I'm like, yeah, it is, because it happened to you once, but you've been stewing on it for the last 30 fucking years, so it is your crap. Yeah. With love.
Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
Yeah, I think one thing, and it kind of falls in that same category, something I think I've thought about, but Chris, you really just hammered it home when you're talking about giving back, of just be there for the kids. And it reminds me of a quote that I'm going to paraphrase. I don't know it exactly, but it's easier to teach. It's easier to teach the kids. It's easier to teach the next generation than it is to fix the broken adults. And I think that there's a negative place you can take that, but there's also the really positive place of just put the energy there. Do what you can to help fix the kids, or help put the kids in a better spot, because then you can break the system. We talk all the time when we're talking problem solving. There's prevention and there's band-aids. Most of what we're doing with adults is band-aids. It's a sad big picture thing to say, over the course of hundreds of years. It's mostly band-aids. The place where you can actually fix it, actually prevent things, that's the kids. And so I love that. Leave the space for them to come back to you, but
awesome.
lay those seeds when they're young. And yeah, that's what I learned today.
Hang out with you guys.
Awesome.
So if I had to say I learned something today, I learned I'd like to hang out with you guys and have a great conversation and continue to use our leverage and our passion as dominant males and confident males to be that role model for those kids, whether the boys or girls, and to continue shining our light. So I've been reaffirmed today in our discussion that I'm on the right track, and that I'm meant to be here for whoever's ready for me. I know people don't. Some people are like, okay, that guy's too much for me, and that's fine. Go find the person that is for you, right? That's so many times we're looking at like that person. It's like, no. Go focus on the person that works for you, because that's what makes the world go round. I don't take offense to it. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's awesome. That's awesome, Chris. I appreciate that. How do folks find you, follow you, hook up with you, learn from you?
NoExcusesCoach.com, they'll find it. I used to say ChristopherRausch.com, but people are like, okay, how do you spell Rausch? So NoExcusesCoach.com. If you want to find other stuff that I'm a part of, if you just Google #NoExcusesCoach, a bunch of my interviews and stuff come up. But if you go to my website, it's got my podcast. I do the Raw and Unscripted show, which actually is tonight. I'd love to get you guys on that. I do the Unfiltered Experience on Friday nights, and in between I do clubhouses, and I do other stuff, all my social media, all my YouTube stuff. I do walk and talk videos. All of it's on my YouTube. So I would love for people to connect with me. And just as a special gift, because I've enjoyed myself so much on this show, I don't normally do this. I do it every once in a while. But anybody who's watching or listening to the show, and up to the first 5, I got to be careful about this. Up to the first 5 that respond, I will give anybody a 45-minute complimentary coaching session with me. This is my way of saying thank you for watching this all the way through, listening to this all the way through. It's my goal in my life that, yes, I can make money at it, but if I can just take that one person and give them a coaching session that changes their life a little bit, the only thing I ask for them is they go do 3 nice things for somebody else, and we just pay it forward. We use our gifts and we go pay it forward. Because that was one of the most empowering movies for me, was Pay It Forward by Haley Joel Osment back in the day. This little kid cast a stone and made a ripple effect around the world that changed people's lives. So that's my gift to the listeners. The first 5 can get that coaching session. I got to be careful now, because I said that on another show and I had 13 people, and I was like, okay, we got 13 sessions, no problem. There's no problem. So it's just my little gift for the first 5 to pay it back for you guys watching and listening to this. And I just can't thank you guys enough. This has been a brilliant conversation. I've been so engaged, and like I said, I've done lots of these, but really appreciate your care and your compassion and your concern to ask the right questions. So thank you guys.
No, thank you. And man, that's awesome. That's an awesome offer, and we'll put that in the show notes, folks. Make sure you're putting you tell Chris where you heard it from. And man, I can't thank you enough for your time today. This has been great. I'm excited for the seeds that you're continuing to plant with this show and what you're doing in the world. Thanks for being here, Chris. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to the Cam and Otis Show, and a special thanks to our guest, Christopher Rausch, for joining us today. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to pass it along to someone else so they can enjoy it too. Make sure to follow the Cam and Otis Show on Facebook and Instagram, and you can watch full videos of the show on YouTube. And while you're there, make sure you check out that subscribe button too. As always, the full archive of our episodes is available at